welcome to a brief introduction to some new features within the Halo dashboard reporting platform. We'll start by taking a look at just the pushing of data to the platform. It's now been simplified, so as before, using Flare here, we make a test selection, click on next. I set up my test. In this case, I'll use a functional browser, local desktop, I'll use Chrome. And I select dashboard reporting in the top right here. All I need to do now is to add a label that represents the purpose of the test run that I'm about to execute. It's a free text entry field that can be anything that's relevant to your users. And most importantly, I need to now add a project ID, the project where I wish to push my data on the Halo dashboard platform. And I add an API key for my project as well. Once I'm happy with those, I simply select Run. So I load the URL for my organization on the Halo platform. I simply add a username and a password, and I click Sign In. Now, depending on my project permissions, as a user, the first thing I'm going to see now is a range of existing projects to choose from. Okay, so as an administrator, this is also the place I can come to manage projects on behalf of the organization. So I can come here and create a new project. I can edit, rename that project if I need to. And if I decide I no longer need it, I can delete that project. So I'll step into my demo project. So this is where I pushed my data earlier. And the place to focus now is on the unassigned labels page. So if you're pushing data for the first time with a new label, so we used example label when we were pushing data from Flare in connection with our API key and our project ID. This is where I come to find that data. Okay, I can click into that run card and I can see everything within the project that's currently unassigned as far as the project hierarchy is concerned. Where we have a single card on each row, that just means we have one card or one run type that's currently associated with this particular label. Where we have more than one card on a row, we have multiple run types but are all associated with the same label, therefore they're presented on the same row. So Halo now gives us the ability to completely customize on a project by project by organization basis a data hierarchy that suits our needs. Okay, so I come to the left hand side to do this. I look at the default node or the root of the project, if you like, which is referred to as project hierarchy, and under that I click on this context menu. I can start to create these child nodes. Okay, so for example, I'm going to separate out my data by environment. Okay, so we'll create a node, child node for prod. We'll create a child node for UAT, and we will create a child node for QA. Okay. I can also delete nodes here if I decide I no longer need them or I create them in error. There is a rule in place that says you cannot have any labels or any associated data on your node in order to be able to delete it. But as far as creating new nodes, I can continue to create as many children nodes as I need, as I wish to have in order to structure my data. Okay. What I can then start to do is look at how I wish to store my data. Okay, so if we take this example label run from here, there's two ways I can do this. I have an assign button here on the unassigned labels page. And now that I've created some nodes in the left-hand navigation, I can simply come here and say, right, that data belongs against the UAT environment or the UAT node. I click that, I click confirm, and that data now presents itself on the UAT node, and at the same time is removed from the unassigned labels page. These three run cards are represented by the same label, so they are going to move together. Okay, so there's a second way of assigning data. So I can go to the node, first of all, I can click on QA, for example. And within this new node that I created, there is a manage labels option here. So I can click on manage labels, and I can look at adding another label. We'll call it Halo Regression. It's a multi-run label. Click add, and now those three cards appear. Okay. Once I've added all the labels that I wish to, I can close this manage labels section. I can work through all of the data on my unassigned labels page until everything has got a home. I've placed it where I wish to find it. I can also add runs via their associated label to multiple nodes. It's not a one-to-one relationship, so if I do for any reason wish to add data to multiple nodes, that's entirely possible as well. If I decide I wish to remove data from a node, I can simply come to the Manage Labels option on the node itself. And then I can simply click on the label that I wish to remove from that particular node. What I can also do is completely delete a run. So let's take this Spark Visual Run, for example. If I open up the context menu on the run card itself, I have the option to delete run. That's a destructive process, so be very careful when you do that. But wherever you've previously allocated that data in terms of adding it to a node, if you delete from anywhere, it will be removed throughout the entire project. And again, I get a success notification in the top right hand side there. We'll just take a quick run through some of the payloads currently on offer between TestEvolve Spark and TestEvolve Halo. So we have two types of application auditing capabilities now. This particular run card represents a Google Lighthouse test. On the run card itself, we simply represent the 4 lowest scoring categories for any number of checks that were made against any number of scenarios in a particular test run. As we click into that, we'll start to see this common pattern of widgets on our run view. So we see the latest scenario statuses themselves in the top left, any specific scoring information dependent on payload has its own widget there. So again, we see the lowest scores for this Lighthouse check. We see the categorization from the Lighthouse check across poor, needs improvement, and good, for example, all specific to Lighthouse. And then the right hand widget is always a detailed breakdown of the scenarios themselves by status, whether that's passed, failed, error, skipped, for example. And then again, particular to the payload, we'll have detailed information about the number of checks, whether it was a single check or multiple checks that were made within a given scenario, and the resultant scores or violations off the back of those checks. As we move down, we see the run trend information again for this type of payload, and the run history table as well. The second auditing check that we offer is an accessibility check via our integration with Axe from DQ Systems. So we see here numbers of accessibility violations, again by check, by scenario. We see specific information in the scoring widget about the international standards that have in some way been violated by some of these checks that have been made. And again, the run history table and the trend information. We have our visual testing run cards. So we offer 3 types of visual testing within TestEvolve. TestEvolve Spark has its own visual testing capability, and we have integrations directly with Applitools Eyes and also Percy from BrowserStack as well. So we see here specific to a visual test, the number of visual checks that were actually made, the number of visual checks that failed. We see a ratio or a spread of checks and the pages on which those checks were actually executed. And then we see information as we did for the other payloads on the right hand side, with specific scenario results, numbers of checks, failures against those checks, and the run history and the run trend table, as we now see on every payload. And finally, most commonly, the standard TestEvolve functional testing payload, where we see in the top left hand widget very specific information about how that test was actually run. So the operating system, the device, whether it's desktop or mobile, the nature of the browser version, etc. We have all of the most important runtime information, so the percentage of passing tests, explicit numbers of passes and fails, so 2 passes, 5 failures in this example, the label of course, the progress of the test job itself, the time it took, the average scenario time, again our run trend and our run history information. With the TestEvolve functional payload, on the right hand side here you will see widgets for features and scenarios, okay, and the ability to step through to a lower level test run report. So where we do have failing scenarios, failing tests within a feature, they will be elevated to the top of the run card, and then when you click through you have this lower level run report with full stack trace information. And if you have your Jira integration enabled, this is also where you can come to raise a bug directly to a Jira project of your choice. So for more detailed information or any kind of support queries, just step over to testevolve.github.io or find TestEvolve on our YouTube channel. Everything for Spark, Flare and Halo, the release notes, the documentation, system requirements, code snippets, best practice concepts will be explained in much greater detail. Thank you very much.